Watching crew, it's Dave the Klone back again with another installment in the Hollow9ine Network's 15 minutes of movie memory madness podcast. I hope you've got a cup of coffee, a damn good cup of coffee, or maybe some water from the water cooler, and are ready to jump into a, I hope, maybe hotly anticipated episode, maybe just because this movie is such a huge landmark. I, like Fred Durst, have seen The Fight Club about 28 times, probably more. I am always astounded, as a quick aside before we get in here, and before I forget to tell you that if you love what you've been hearing on this series, make sure you hit that like and subscribe buttons, smash the bell icon, whatever else the kids are saying to do on this particular platform, or any platform that lets us know that you like what's going on, and to make sure you don't miss even a single second of a movie that, okay, this movie, now that I've seen it well over 28 times, it is just a part of the genetic makeup of who I am now, I guess. And I think I probably should be a little trepidatious about saying that because it ages interestingly, like everything else that we're watching in the post-2020s now. Things that were sort of mainstays and pillars of the film watching community, now having this new strange lens of modernity looking back that none of us can agree on what's what anymore. But I think no matter what, if you were alive during the time where this movie was new and became an instant hallmark of the lexicon of cool, ironically not commercially very successful when it was in the theaters. In fact, before I'd even seen it, I remember my younger sister telling me, like, oh yeah, there's this new movie with Brad Pitt all about these like underground boxing clubs where people just beat each other up. That was the synopsis I got. So obviously anybody who has seen the movie and knows the movie and knows the depths, which I eventually discovered when I first watched this with a group of friends in college, that did not do it justice. You know how, like, sometimes when people tell you, oh yeah, man, there's this new movie coming out and it's like all about this, and they give you some kind of like basic description and it sets up in your mind an image, right? Like, it's almost like when you first hear Heath Ledger was gonna play the Joker and you're like, what the fuck? What? That makes no sense. Yet then you watch the actual movie, or like, you know, when Heath Ledger was playing Joker and you finally saw the first images hitting the internet. The Fight Club, unfortunately, or fortunately, probably more fortunately I would say, came out well before the advent or the expanse of the internet and what it became. There was definitely email and stuff and AOL when this movie came out. But the internet was in its more everything's fun and innocent phase, you know, in 1999. 1999! Oh my God. We're talking 25 years ago. Quarter century club. Oh my God. Based on the Chuck Palahniuk. I have never known how to say that guy's name. I just say Chuck P. Like Chuck D, but Chuck P. And oh man. And directed by, at the time, this was, I think, maybe the movie that created the legend powerhouse that is David Fincher. I mean, he did make his appearance with Alien 3, but I think once this movie came out, that became the... Oh, 7 also. But, you know, this as the third at bat definitely was the solidification of like, okay, this guy can do whatever he wants. Mr. Notorious for doing 80 takes of a scene and really in a almost Hitchcockian way of treating the actors like tools or paintbrushes on a canvas, more so than people. Not saying that in such a derogatory way. I'm just saying it to say it. There's some artists that's how they operate. In fact, ironically, I was watching, or I was doom scrolling on Instagram, and I stopped on a clip featuring Ed Norton, one of the stars of this movie, in a sort of roundtable discussion. And they didn't show everybody. You know, this is one of the things that sucks about doom scrolling, is sometimes you catch a little piece of something and you're like, what the hell is that? I'd watch the full thing just to get the full picture here. But he's on a couch next to Mark Ruffalo, and I'm imagining Ruffalo is talking about working on Zodiac, and somehow Fincher came up. Ed Norton is like, oh yeah, well, you know, you've worked with him too, you know what he's like, he's a genius. And Ruffalo goes, yeah, but like the guy, I mean, you know, you will question reality, you'll question yourself. It's almost like one of those intimidating geniuses. Like if I ever had the opportunity to work with David Lynch, I would probably be sitting there shitting my pants the whole time, because it's just like, oh my god, it's David Lynch. And I think people are like that with David Fincher, mostly because what Mark Ruffalo relayed this story about how they're doing this walk and talk, a long shot, and he has like about, I don't know, a couple pages of dialogue to get through, and they keep doing it. He said they did, like, take 35 happens, and Fincher goes and moves an extra in the background just like 2 steps over, and they do the whole thing again. And then he goes, we cross take 80, and I hear him yell to his assistant, hey, delete the first 35, because now you're filming digital, you could do that. And it's just, and he said, you know, the whole time he's thinking like, oh my god, okay, so I didn't know if I was the guy for this, and now we've done this 80 times. It's obvious at this point I'm not the guy, and I'm sure when he cuts the next time he's going to come over and tell me I'm not the guy. And this is Mark Ruffalo. Now, I know Mark Ruffalo probably does not register necessarily on everybody's radar as like an Academy Award type guy. He's known for maybe playing a lot of character parts, and I've always liked Mark Ruffalo. I think he's awesome. I actually think in some ways Hulk is a little bit of a dilution of the guy's prowess as an actor. In fact, I really loved his character in Collateral, the Michael Mann film, another episode yet to come here on the 15 minutes of movie memory madness. I was actually kind of bummed that his character got killed in that movie. But, you know, you're talking about a professional who's done this a lot, and it's just the meticulousness. And what he wound up boiling it down to is that David Fincher is the kind of filmmaker who, it's like everything has to work and hit exactly right. And he doesn't care how many takes it takes to do that. He wants, when everyone gives it that 110% perfect performance, even if it's a guy in the background who's out of focus, who just needed to be 2 steps over more into the frame. And so I think a movie like Fight Club and what this movie did to the psyche of America at large and everyone who watched it established that credit, you know. It almost, and so, you know, movies since Fight Club and TV shows, in particular Mindhunter, which features Holt McCallany, who is one of the Project Mayhem guys in Fight Club, you can kind of get the sense that it's being made by somebody with this level of meticulousness. And it's almost kind of, in a way, I mean, I feel like you put Fincher and like Christopher Nolan and Michael Mann in like a camp of like experts at their craft, and they all have very different approaches to the way they do this. And but you can tell like there's something almost about the the quiet parts of movies that David Fincher makes and TV shows. I'm thinking about Mindhunter in particular, that almost like you could kind of feel the weight of the kind of planning and the kind of absolute perfectionism going on. And at the time, 1999, we weren't used to this. We were not used to what this movie did. In fact, so I watched this for the first time with a group of friends in college once it had finally come to video. So I went to school in Maryland at a school called Washington College, which was in Chestertown. I'm sure anybody who's there now has a much different experience than when I was there at the turn of the century. Regardless, though, where it is located is sort of at this 45 minutes from DC, 45 minutes from Baltimore, 45 minutes from Philly, 45 minutes from, I guess, like maybe like Wildwood-ish, New Jersey, South Jersey. It's like a crossroads on the way out, 45 minutes away from Annapolis. It's like a crossroads away from a lot of other places in an area that's mostly rural, lots of cornfields, and maybe it's got like a couple stoplights along a highway that's going through the area. It was an awesome school. I loved my experience there. I would love to talk to somebody who's been there recently to see how different it is. I don't know that I would go back necessarily. I might. Who knows? If I ever really break, like if I ever really get famous or something, I would go back if they invited me back. I actually have a real chip on my shoulder about the place because I didn't win this huge writing prize that would have started life off with no debt. It would have been nice, and I had turned in like a ton of work that I thought for sure showed that I had potential to make a living with creative writing endeavors, which is what the whole basis of the award was. In any case, I sort of have a little bit of a vendetta, like I refuse to give money to the school if the professor who was the reason I didn't win is still there. But remembering things like watching Fight Club with my friends makes me feel like going back, and there was also a lot of cool stuff that happened to me. I like kind of had a little bit of a rock star life while I was in college, and I recently posted a photo from one of my performances on Facebook, and lots of people were like, "Oh man, I remember those days," including a couple of my former bandmates. But back to the matter at hand, since I'm rambling all over the place, this would be like take 100 now of David Fincher's Fight Club. We watched it with zero preparation, zero expectation, no idea what this was going to be like. It's one of those things like again, like Memento. It's very rare, to be able to have that experience where you're going in with a completely blank slate. YouTube was not around at this time, so it's not like we were catching trailers on the internet. It was still very much, you had to catch a trailer on TV. In fact, I remember being in college when Snatch came out, and I had only seen a couple TV commercials for it, and it wasn't playing at the one theater in the town where my college was, only had 5 screens. So it was sort of a crapshoot of what movies would wind up playing there. If you wanted to go see a movie, you'd have to drive the 45 minutes to an hour over to Annapolis, to the mall that was there. And so it was easy for a movie like Fight Club or a movie like Snatch to fly under the radar. And so, but we had 2 video stores. One of them closed not long after I was there, I think during my sophomore year, which was the year 98 to 99 or 99 to 2000. So I started in 98, so 98 crossing over to 99 was my freshman year, and 99 crossing over to 2000 was my sophomore year. So this movie was released in 99, Fight Club was released in 99, but we didn't see it until second semester, so it was definitely 2000. Rented on tape from the one video store that stayed open. The video store that closed was awesome because they were selling all their tapes, so I had a whole bunch of movies that I was like, yo, this is fucking badass. Unfortunately, Fight Club was not among them. We rented Fight Club, and we got kind of stoned, like you do in college, getting ready to watch a movie for the first time, and put on Fight Club, and it was the kind of thing that everybody in the room, within a few minutes, we went silent. It was like hooked, and already our minds are being blown. Again, no movies really like this. I mean, think the level of like A Clockwork Orange when it was released, and how the audiences at the time were so not really ready. And the only people who might have been ready for this movie is anyone who had read the book. But even the book, which I had read several years later, I read it on, during my commuting days when I was still part of corporate America. I had plenty of time on the train, and that was, lamenting for a second if I could. That was the best, being able to just kind of burn through books because of, all this free time on the train. And anyway, the book itself, it's almost like if I had read the book before the movie, I may not have liked the movie, which I hear is a phenomenon that happened. Which is hard to imagine because, when we watched this movie back, we're all over the place. We're jumping around, deal with it. I'm sure you're ready for this. in the ADD of today's psyche, it's not anything new. And so we watched the movie. We were stunned into astonishment. Everything about it, the way it, and early, this is one of the first real meta movies where you have like times where the characters are breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience, and it feels natural and not gimmicky. It feels like, how could you do this movie without that? The main character, played by Ed Norton, is just credited as narrator. So immediately, without us realizing at the time, being too young to know the language of film to be able to describe it this way, we are immediately aligned with his perspective. We are immediately aligned with him being our sort of voice in the film and our sort of adopted perspective, because the first time you watch it, there's another thing about this movie, much like Memento or episode to come, The Usual Suspects, you can never, ever recreate the experience of watching this for the first time because of the twists that you, the first time seeing it, especially if you're young, do not see coming. Even though when you watch it again, this is one of those perfect example films of like, it's definitely designed so that on the first viewing, your mind is just blown. Like your whole ability to watch movies is changed. Your whole life as a movie-going audience member will never be the same, and they know it. So they have all these things hidden throughout the film that on second viewing immediately start becoming apparent. And then every time you watch it after, even now, in doing the little bit of a prep I was doing, grabbing imagery and reading, reviews and listening to reviews of this movie in the course of collecting media to do all the visuals that accompany the episode on YouTube. For those of you who are watching it on YouTube, for those of you listening to this somewhere where you're not watching it on YouTube, I highly suggest you check out the YouTube versions just so that you could see some of the memory-inducing highlight moments that are selected to be part of the visual presentation. In any case, once this movie is over, we literally, much like Locke on Lost, going, we're going to need to watch that again. We just rewound the tape to the beginning and started it over. It was just like, nope, once is not enough. And even then, though, that was like you try the new drug and you're like, oh my God, give me another hit, because now that I felt this, I need to feel it again. And already, you're not going to be, it's almost like, again, like you can't watch Usual Suspects after the big twist in the last minute of the movie and then go back and watch the beginning without that knowledge. So the same here, this movie, huge twists. Maybe I'll screw it up for you. Maybe I'll spoil it for you. Maybe I won't. It's 1999. You've had 25 years. Maybe some of you have just broken out of prison or a cave or a cult and have not been exposed to so much of the media of the world. And for that, I am so sorry. But you still had plenty of time. It became, like I said, it was a Limp Bizkit lyric. I've seen The Fight Club about 28 times. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was, if it wasn't chocolate starfish and hot dog flavored water, it was probably the next one, whatever that one was called. I can't remember, and I was a big Limp Bizkit fan. Don't hold it against me. There was a lot of like Tyler Durden. Tyler Durden is the cool, hip, character to want to be. Very much a villain you love, almost the level of an anti-hero. So, the movie following Ed Norton as an everyman, miserable in their existence, can't sleep, becoming an insomniac because of the monotony of life. And the book itself is supposed to be somewhat of a commentary on, capitalism, much in the same way that the book of American Psycho is. Bret Easton Ellis on that one. But, and how a lot of us become trapped by the monotony and feeling this unfulfilled repetition of nothingness that is just kind of draining our soul. And so that's what's going on with the narrator until he finally meets Tyler Durden, who is the complete opposite. He's completely free in every sense of the idea and concept of freedom. He is unencumbered by responsibility, yet he is able to somehow survive, but survive a little bit more, almost like survival chic is the way he thrives. When the two characters meet, they're sort of polar opposites. Our narrator has a wardrobe of, not extremely fancy, but, corporate appropriate suits, and he has the entire IKEA apartment collection. His whole existence is based on all these things that going into the 90s and early 2000s we were sort of conditioned to see as materialistic symbols of success, right? That I think I love, in fact, they're during their meet cute for these two male characters. So there is a lot of sort of weird homoeroticism happening throughout the film as well. They meet on a plane on one of the narrator's business trips, and he immediately coins the phrase single-serving friend. Now, I don't know if anybody out there has ever had this experience, been traveling for work or traveling for some other sort of objective-based, not on vacation, so not expecting to make friends, but you're on the road and you wind up chatting with the person sitting next to you, and you make what's called a single-serving friend because you will probably never see each other again, especially at the time that this movie came out. They had cell phones and stuff, but it wasn't like everybody had one. It was a little bit early. Even at the time I was watching this in college, I didn't have a cell phone. My sophomore year, I think the most I had was a pager. And it wasn't like the way it is now where you can instantly trade contact info. The idea, if you were sort of striking up a friendship with the person on the flight, but you didn't get to the point where you actually exchanged phone numbers, yeah, you're probably never going to see them again. So immediately it goes from Tyler being one of his single-serving friends to he gets home from this trip, the same trip that he met Tyler on the plane home, and his apartment is blown up. His apartment has exploded and sent all of his stuff into the nothingness, and so he calls the number on the business card that Tyler gave him, and now they have this kind of like first philosophical meeting of the minds over a pitcher of beer. And when they go back to Tyler's house, it's this like decrepit, dilapidated, the Paper Street Soap Company house. It's a house on Paper Street, and he either owns it and has let it run down, or more likely, from the way it sort of visually appears, he's squatting there. And it's funny because, like, the first time you watch it, again, much like you're going on the journey the first time with the narrator, so you see the house and you're just like, Jesus, oh. But then when you watch the movie again, you're like, oh, it's the house. You know what I mean? Which is, I think that's a little typical with every movie. There's those things that, like, you kind of are like, oh. In fact, they do say, for any of my listeners out there, all the hundreds of you who've been tuning in, I appreciate it. It is awesome. They say if you're somebody prone to being overwhelmed with anxiety or depression or any of the sort of nouveau riche, ritual, habitual, normalcy, normalized conditions that we're all existing in now. They say there's something about the familiarity of rewatching movies you've already seen or TV shows you've already seen because of the sort of, you know what's coming next, you know what to expect. It's not like life where we're just blindly moving forward through time, having no idea what's going to be next and what to be ready for. So there's something kind of soothing about that. It works, and it's funny because I feel like when thinking about that now, how sort of ahead of its time a movie like Fight Club was, because it's almost as if David Fincher knew that back then, when I think it was at least, I was watching this as a sophomore in college, so I hadn't become as cynical and jaded by having like 4 decades of life under my belt and rife with all kinds of experiences and disappointments. And, you know, I had no frame of reference for the narrator's sort of bout with mediocrity. I had no idea what that type of I'm being destroyed by having gotten to this level and finding out that it's unfulfilling, that it's part of the garbage we all have to do, yet not necessarily what we all hoped we would wind up doing, and certainly isn't something that by doing it over and 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 over again, being a worker bee in a cubicle, even though it lets you buy anything and everything you want from the IKEA catalog, it's not glamorous. And Tyler represents a sort of more primal, you know, the world was never supposed to get to this level. I live bare bones, and I in fact run underground boxing clubs because that's how we get back to our real default level of humanity. Now, this is the part where I guess we have to stray into the modern view, looking back at this and seeing how it's very male-oriented. It's all guys in the Fight Club. The only real female character in this movie that has any agency is the character played by Helena Bonham Carter, Marla Singer, who we first are introduced to during the sort of first act of the movie, where the narrator, to combat his insomnia after the doctor wouldn't give him medication for it, the doctor suggests, if you want to see people in pain, because how he used the buzzwords, he's like, Doc, I'm in pain. He goes, you want to see pain? Go see the guys who meet every Thursday night at the Testicular Cancer Support Group, which is where he meets Meatloaf, who plays Bob. Bob has bitch tits. They wouldn't get away with that. That I'm surprised. I'm pretty sure probably that line alone, being part of the movie, is cancelable according to today's standards. Not that I agree with them. I'm just putting it out there. But Bob is suffering cancer from all of the testosterone he used to pump into his body when he was a bodybuilder. And so now he's lost his balls, and the testosterone imbalance made him grow boobs. And it's I'm probably making too light of it. It's hard to talk about this these days, but back in 1999, it was funny. And these support groups become like a new habit for him, the narrator, because they are what is bringing him peace of mind. He's able to sleep at night now because of all these different groups where he's pretending to have all the ailments. He had like his whole week is built around going to blood parasites and brain cancer and bone cancer and prostate cancer and all these different places. And Marla Singer comes into the testicular cancer support group one day, and just her being there, he calls her a tourist like him, because obviously she doesn't have testicular cancer, although I guess that's problematic too now that I bring it up. Jeez, man, wow, what a weird world. And once his world is invaded by another tourist like him, another faker, he is now back to being insomniac. And so the next thing that needs to happen was him meeting someone like Tyler. And Tyler really opens his eyes with these fight clubs that he starts. You know, at first it's like, hey, yes, you need a place to stay. Come crash with me in this shithole house that I live in, with brown rusted water coming out of the shower and the paint chipping off and like the ceiling collapsing. But it's funny because like it starts with him just saying, hey man, hit me. I want you to hit me as hard as you can. I've never been in a fight. Have you? I wonder what it's like. And from them being seen fighting each other in a parking lot, a couple other people are just watching and then say, hey, can I get in next? And it becomes this thing where now it's like growing, and it's now has to go underground because it can't just have a bunch of people beating the shit out of each other in a parking lot. And slowly but surely, the movement to recapture manhood, recapture what our intended way of life. I mean, really it is, they become an anti-culture, nihilism-driven anti-culture against capitalism, and they sort of try to wake the world up from this weird, matrixy kind of monotonous causality loop that we wind up all falling into. And it's pretty wild, you know, like the things that are explored, and it being such a revolutionarily made film. Like, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it, because I even have it on in the background while I'm doing this, and I'm going, well, you know, it's like me even talking about it doesn't do it justice. And the book does not follow any kind of linear story. The book is all over the place. It bounces back and forth between all of these different sort of moments that somehow David Fincher and screenwriter Jim Uhls, UHLS, let's see what else he's done. He's probably done other stuff. I'm sure he's done other stuff. Fight Club, The Leviathan, which is a short. I guess Fight Club's the biggest thing he's done. He's done a few TV movies like Semper Fi. Yeah, Fight Club. That's it, Jim. Jim, congratulations, man. Fight Club's a big one if you have to just have one under your belt. Let's see. Yeah, and that's it. What did he produce? Nothing. Okay, cool. Anyway, the fact that they were able to weave a linear story out of the book is phenomenal. But things like when you rewatch it, you see these little sort of flashes of Tyler's character that are only in there for a frame. And it's supposed to be at these like key moments where the narrator is realizing the monotony of his life is what's driving him insane. So it's almost like these kind of like foreshadows that even his psyche was picking up on. There's going to be somebody who's going to show up and break you out of this. All right, let's do it. Elephant in the room. Why, as the movie goes on, all kinds of things start happening, and the narrator becomes less and less informed about how this sort of underground boxing club is slowly but surely becoming a sort of domestic terrorist cell organization that is planning on. Now, I have often said, if this was able to be put into a movie in 1999, and since then we've had groups like Anonymous and TV shows like Mr. Robot all sort of come to the fold. Obviously, these things were made possible to have any sort of mainstream life by a movie like Fight Club, setting up our minds to be able to accept the concept. You start to wonder why something like this hasn't really happened, and if something like this could really happen. So Project Mayhem is what the Fight Clubs turn into. Project Mayhem is a group of people that found themselves anew from attending Fight Club, a place that has rules. Like, rule number 1 is you don't talk about Fight Club. You're not supposed to be able to legally go and have these bare-knuckle boxing matches where people are getting, like, maimed and beat unconscious, or beat to the point where they have to go and get reconstructive plastic surgery. Yeah, Jared Leto gets really fucked up at one scene. But it is improving all these people's lives, you know, the confidence that the narrator gets to even be able to not only talk back to his boss at work, but he winds up blackmailing. I mean, he winds up staging. He beats himself up in his manager's office and does it in such a way that when people burst into the room, it looks like the manager beat the shit out of him, and he is now able to basically blackmail the manager into continuing to pay him even though he no longer will come to work. And now Fight Club had corporate sponsorship. I mean, it's something I think a lot of us were, especially once you enter the working world. I mean, as someone who worked in corporate, who wasn't necessarily just a drone, but like got the sense of the soullessness of the machine. I'm just a cog here. I'm just adding to the friggin' firewood. I am not lighting the fire. I'm not, feeling like I've achieved the heights or whatever my potential could get me to. You always think, oh, how great it would be if I could get that kind of corporate sponsorship and not have to go to this place where I feel like my soul being drained away from me every day. I can go in and pursue other hopes and dreams. Not saying that I want to start like a domestic terrorist cell, but the fact that, so Project Mayhem, all these guys newly empowered, they're fighting back, right? So they're vandalizing. It's mostly vandalism, blowing up corporate art. But their ultimate plan is to blow up all the heads of the credit card companies, all the headquarters where all the information, again, back in the day, before we had the cloud, before information lived somewhere we don't know, this idea seemed like it was something that could have legs, right? You blow up the headquarters of all the credit card companies, all the record of the public debt goes back to zero. We are all set free. And so I wonder why nothing like that ever came to pass, and if that's something that still could somehow be on the horizon. But even more so, the bigger twist of all this is you find out at the end of the movie, well, mostly at the beginning of like the last act of the film, which ties all the way back to the opening shot of the film, which was Ed Norton sitting in a chair with a gun in his mouth, being held there by Brad Pitt, who plays Tyler Durden. And then Brad Pitt walks over to the windows and is looking out the building and he's saying, oh, it's just a few minutes now, and the whole world's gonna change. And the narrator character tells us, like, downstairs in the parking garage of this building there is a van filled with homemade explosives, enough to take the building down. I know this because Tyler knows this. Hold on, wait, let me start over. We come full circle once it is revealed that Tyler Durden actually is the alter ego of our narrator character. And that's the kind of thing when you're, 20 years old in college and stoned out of your mind. Once that happens, you're literally like, oh my fucking God, this is like, okay, oh my God, I don't even know how to handle this. And that was why we had to like let's just start that over again. And I think we stayed up till like 4 a.m. watching this movie twice in a row. In fact, my group of people, the suite that I lived in, the roommates and friends that I lived in with, we watched it twice, and then the next day we were telling everybody at lunch about it, and then they went and rented it, and they wound up keeping the tape for like months. Now, for those of you who are strangers to the phenomenon of renting videotapes, this shit was expensive. At the end of the semester, one of the guys who lived in that suite, I think, wound up paying like a couple $100 in late fees, because you would rent a movie and get it for like 2 days, and then you'd have to bring it back, and for every day you didn't bring it back, it was like $5 or $6 or whatever. So, do the math. But it was the kind of thing, like that's how it was. People watched it and were like, okay, I need this. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe I lived on Earth without this. I can't believe that there was a time where this was not a part of like my knowledge of pop culture. And a lot of it was from that twist ending, from the Tyler Durden is the narrator. also known as Jack, I think, because when they first went into the Paper Street house, there was a whole collection of these like Life magazines where this one writer was doing a series of articles written from the perspective of different bodily organs within a fictitious Jack character. I am Jack's liver, I am Jack's spleen. And so a lot of people thought of this guy as Jack. I am the movie's narrator. In any case, so yeah, the movie's big fight at the end between these two characters is a guy fighting himself. And then when you go and rewatch the movie, you start going, okay, so all these scenes where he was walking and talking with Tyler, he was really just talking to himself out loud. He must have really looked crazy to the whole world. But at the same time, people saw a guy fighting with himself in the parking lot and then asking if they could fight. So somehow that level of security in your own identity and your own character, not having it being tied to like what kind of suit you wear or what brand name you follow, definitely is an interesting concept. And so there's a lot going on. There's a lot with the idea of they make soap and they make it out of fat that they steal from the dumpsters outside of liposuction clinics, and they said that, we make a fortune selling women their fat asses back to them. I mean, it's kind of like, interesting to think that back then these concepts were able to be molded into this movie that really made you stop and think about things. In any case, see The Fight Club 28 times and see what it does to you. I hope you like what you hear in here. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're like me, a lover of films. And when you hear this podcast, it reminds you of the first time you saw movies that have become staples in your lexicon of cool. And, please join in the conversation. Let me know what movies you think I should do in case I have or have not seen them. I'd love to hear what the folks at home have in their locker as far as movies that they remember. And who knows, your choice could become the next episode of the 15 minutes of movie memory madness, and it could be your movie memory madness that we are celebrating. I am going to take my leave. I'm just about out of cooler water. Oh my God. And I need a cup of coffee to keep going. So until next time, I've been Dave the Klone. This has been the Hollow9ine Network's 15 minutes of movie memory madness. Please join in the fun. Hollow9ine podcast at gmail.com. That's the word hollow, the number 9, INE, podcast, all one big happy word at gmail.com. And I will see you next time when we remember the movies.
You've been listening to the Hollow9ine Network, bringing you the very best in fan-made media. That's the word hollow, the number 9, INE. Find the Hollow9ine Network on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. Rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Email us at hollow9podcast@gmail.com. Leave us your feedback. Join in the conversation and be a part of the action. Join in the fun. Hollow9ine.